G'day and welcome to Disc Golf Down Under. It's Matt here, and a huge thanks to everybody who has supported the channel. We just surged past 5,000 subscribers recently, something I never expected when I started this channel a couple of years ago. So to celebrate, I wanted to do something special, and firstly, I'm going to be doing a giveaway, so keep watching to the end to find out how you can enter for a chance to win. And secondly, this video is inspired by you, my viewers and subscribers. And I posted back on social media a couple of weeks ago for you to ask me anything. And in this video, I'm going to cover off as many questions as I can, covering some very important and interesting topics. So grab the popcorn and settle in. So before sitting down to do this video, I thought I'd have a look at the channel analytics. And it's an interesting story in itself. The channel started just over 3 years ago in August 2020, and since then there's been 500,000 views of my videos and 53,000 hours watched. My first viral video was a review of the Arobi Epic, now with 70,000 views, and 2 out of 3 subscribers are from the US of A, and 99.5% of you are male. And for the 5% of you in Finland, hyvää päivää ja kiitos. Hopefully I didn't murder that one. Okay, so let's dive in and start with the first question, which is from Daniel Prendergast, who asked, have you been in contact with Simon Lizotte since he shouted you out saying he watched some of your videos? Well, that was a very interesting day. If you've not heard the story, it was just after Simon Lizotte announced his signing with MVP, and he was giving an interview on the Nick and Matt show.
There's one guy, I think he's called Disc Golf Down Under. Massive shout out. He makes some amazing MVP videos, and he explains everything from plastic to the science behind them to comparing discs to other manufacturers. Really great. He helped me out a ton. Well, I didn't talk to him. I just watched his videos.
Now, at the time I was on holidays, and at the time of the interview, I was driving through remote alpine area in northern Victoria into the southern part of New South Wales. I had no internet, no phone coverage for about 6 hours of that drive. And as I drove into Jindabyne, my phone started going crazy. I'm getting text messages, messages through YouTube, social media, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? So yeah, it was very surreal to see that. I've been a huge fan of Simon since I started playing, and I was just shocked, to be honest. I think I had a permanent smile on my face for the next few days. Have I been in contact with Simon since then? Well, I'd love to say yes, but unfortunately not. Hopefully Simon still watches the occasional Disc Golf Down Under video, and hey, maybe one day we will catch up. And sticking with the topic of Simon, Evan Larson asks, what do you think of Simon's win at D-Glow? Well, it was great to see Simon winning his second big tournament this year. His driving and his upshots during D-Glow were just great to watch. He struggled a bit with his putting in round 3, and I didn't think he was going to get there, to be honest, but on the final day, it just clicked and all came together, and it was just beautiful to watch. And hole 16 was very smart disc golf. And if you haven't seen it, go check out the final round on Jomez. And congrats to Simon, and good luck at Worlds. Next question is from Tim, who asks, has Australia seen significant growth or interest in the sport over the last 3 years, the same way we have in the US? And yes, I think it's been a bit of a global phenomenon, and the Aussie disc golf scene benefited hugely from the pandemic. I think the numbers playing the sport has more than doubled, or maybe even tripled in the past 3 years, and it doesn't look like slowing down anytime soon. In Oz, we saw a huge number of ultimate players come across to the sport after they couldn't play their team sports, and this was great to see, and they've hung around. And I remember going to the Aussie Champs in 2019 before the pandemic with a grand total of 100 entrants in a disc golf mecca, Mount Gambier. And then the next Aussie Champs in 2021, the event capped out at 183, hitting capacity well before the event. So it was huge growth. Next up, Dylan Samples says, in the bag update, maybe a collection tour? And Dylan's not the only one to ask this. I've had a few requests lately to do an in the bag after the last one I did back in early 2021. So let's do an update, starting with my putters. And if you've been watching my recent videos, you'll have noticed that I've been running an experiment to see what putting putter works best for me. And I started with putting in the dry with different plastics, and then in the soaking wet. And since then I've been doing heaps of putting with the Streamline Pilot in Neutron and Electron plastics, and the MVP Ohm in Neutron and Soft Proton plastic. And all up I did 200 putts with each disc, 50 at 6 meters, 50 at 7, 50 at 8, 50 at 9. And this was all indoors, similar to my previous experiment, and over multiple days. Now, as Adam Savage once said, the difference between screwing around and science is writing it down, and I did just that. And I've crunched the results, and overall, my C1 average with all discs was 69.4%. And interestingly, in the 6 to 7 metre range, the Ohm performed more than 8% better than the Pilot, with this soft proton Ohm averaging 84%. But moving out to 8 and 9 metres, the tables flipped and the Pilot performed 5% better than the Ohm. And specifically, this neutron Pilot performed very well with a 63% average at 9 metres. And why was this, you might ask? Well, I found at the longer distance, the Ohm was coming into the chains with more speed, and I was seeing the Ohm spit out a little more often than the Pilot. And my theory is that the slicker proton plastic is not grabbing the chains as well. Anyway, final decision. I went with the soft proton Ohm as it had the best overall C1 average at 72.9%, edging out the neutron Pilot at 71.4%. It also helps that I prefer the feel of the soft proton plastic for putting. So I'm now putting with this beautiful blue soft proton Ohm with the OTB open stamp. Okay, moving on to my other putters and my driving putters in particular. So we've already talked about the Ohm. I do have another Ohm. This is my wonderful Ace disc, a neutron Ohm that's been with me for a while now. Laser straight, does have a little bit of flip, but love this disc. Another disc that's been with me for ages, and this was in the original or the earlier in the bag. It's the soft neutron Envy. Love this disc. Is getting a little bit flippier in its age and maybe switched out soon, but yeah, still working great for driving. The Glitch. We have a Glitch. This is my get out of jail free card. Did a review on it recently, check that out. Don't throw it very often, but it's great for just those unusual shots that you might need to throw every now and again. Has tons of glide. Disc that I throw a hell of a lot, a non-MVP disc, it's the Caster Plus Berg in the K1 Soft. This is a fantastic disc. I love that you can just rip on it and it'll just fall out of the sky and land next to the basket. Use that a hell of a lot. Another disc that I'm starting to use a lot is this brand new Entropy. So this is in the Cosmic Neutron plastic and very overstable. I really love this. It's very similar to the Berg but has a lot of stability. So using this more and more as well. Another disc that's in the bag, doesn't get used very often, is the Spin in this R2 plastic. Maybe going to get kicked out of the bag soon. I don't use it a lot and I tend to find it's very, very touchy. So stay tuned. Okay, let's continue with the questions. And Nathan Randall asks, what courses in or out of Australia do you want to play that you haven't yet made it to? And well, that's a great question. And in Oz, Poimina down in Tassie is one course I haven't managed to get to yet, but I'll be kicking it off later this year with the 2023 Aussie Champ, so can't wait for that. And I also want to get over to Western Australia sometime soon, and I'd love to play Pine Lines and Mundaring. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to make WA Open this year because, well, I'm busy preparing for the New South Wales Open coming up here in Sydney in a few weeks. Outside Oz, I definitely want to play in New Zealand soon. A group of friends spent a month playing in NZ earlier this year and I was just so jealous. So many great courses in the land of the long white cloud, and sometime soon I hope to get there. And besides that, there's so many great courses in the US. Number one on my list has got to be Maple Hill, and while I'm in the area, I reckon Smuggler's Knot should be great too. Next question is from Colin Kusky, who asks, when do you think we'll see a DGPT silver event in Australia? Well, maybe I'm being a bit pessimistic, but I think we're probably still a way off from a Silver Series event in Oz. Last year when Drew Gibson, Jennifer Allen and Scott Stokely were here for the Aussie Champs, they commented that Aussie disc golf felt like the US scene was about 10 to 15 years ago. So will it take 10 to 15 years? Nah, I don't think so. Maybe 5 or so years would be my best guess, but I'd be stoked to be wrong about it. And we actually got a PDGA A tier coming up at Mount Gambier very soon. Moving on, Ben Homard asks, Matt, what's your most memorable disc golf course experience and any advice for growing a disc golf community? Well, thanks, Ben. Without a doubt, Mount Gambier is my favourite and most memorable course. Everything about that place is just perfect. Beautiful scenery, great course design, the facilities, the community, along with the atmosphere and the serenity. It's also where I won the MA40 Aussie Champs back in 2018. So it's definitely memorable for that moment also. As for the second part, advice on building a disc golf community. Well, that's a tough one, but I'd like to give a massive shout out to Central West Disc Golf in Molong. This little country town in central New South Wales with a population of just over 2,500 people has a thriving disc golf scene with a high female participation rate and some strong up and coming juniors. And they have almost as many players at their league days as the big cities do. And if you live in Oz and you haven't been to a Molong tournament yet, put it on your bucket list. The events are fantastic. The town treats you like a rock star. And it was just announced that the 2024 Aussie Champs will be held in Molong, so that's going to be huge. So, advice for growing a disc golf community, just look at what Kevin, Sharon and the team at Central West Disc Golf have done and just do what they've done. Okay, McMisco asks, have you travelled internationally to play disc golf? Well, not yet, but it's something I definitely want to do when I get the time. I was seriously considering World AMs back in 2020, but then 2020 happened. And as I mentioned earlier, New Zealand is at the top of my list at the moment and hoping to get to the northeast corner of the US one day soon. Okay, so let's continue with the in the bag and move on to the mids, and we'll go from most stable to least stable. And another nice new disc that I just got recently is this OTB Open Deflector. I've had a neutron deflector in my bag for a long time. This thing is just got a bit more stability and I love this for upshots. Yeah, fantastic disc. Next, the Pyro. I've bagged the Pyro for some time now. It's sort of in that range of stability between the reactor and the deflector. Nice upshot disc and use that a lot. And then I got the reactor. So a little bit more stable than the Hex and a little less stable than the Pyro. Probably don't use this one as much. I don't have too much of a need for it, but it's in the bag for those shots where you need to shape them just gradually around a corner or do a little bit of baby flex. Next, the Hex. I did a review on the Hex versus the Buzz about 12 to 18 months ago, and I said the Buzz was better than the Hex. Well, this is the disc that changed my mind. I love the plastic that this comes in. It just feels so good. It has the right amount of flex, and this thing is just a laser beam. I mentioned that the first time I threw this, I threw it in the basket. So 85 to 90 meters, bang, dead center. Didn't know how it was going to fly. I just threw it at the basket and it went in. So Hex, love it. Best disc ever. And then just on the understable end is the uplink in this neutron plastic. This is the special edition. I love the uplink as well. Great for those little turnovers. It's got a bit of understability. Throw this quite a lot to get those left to right turning upshots. Paradox, did try it, didn't like it, too flippy for me. Okay, Tim is back for another question, and he asks, have you noticed any noticeable difference between MVP and Axiom discs? I've heard some say that Axiom beats in faster while MVP doesn't beat in nearly as fast as other brands. Wondering what your thoughts are. Well, personally, I've not noticed any difference between MVP or Axiom brands, and theoretically the plastic blends should be the same. And I've not noticed the Axiom coloured rims wearing or beating in any differently to the black ones on the MVP discs. However, back a few years ago, MVP followed a routine of releasing an MVP branded disc, followed soon after by an Axiom disc that had the same flight numbers except for a tick less stability. So we had the MVP Servo released in early 2014, and then that was followed up a few months later with the Axiom Crave. So back in the day, each MVP disc typically had a less stable counterpart released from Axiom, and I think that still happens occasionally, but not as much as it used to. Now, CyberDark Zero says, my girlfriend is from Adelaide, South Australia, and given we are here in the US for now, she loves hearing another fellow Aussie. Other than Mount Gambier, what other course would you recommend me to play when visiting? Well, for any serious visiting disc golfer, Mount Gambier is a must. And there's some other great courses popping up in South Australia now as well. Now, it is a little bit out of the way, but if you love your disc golf, you have to do it. And besides that, I haven't played there yet, but Perth has a good mix of quality courses. And another favourite of mine is Western Park in Canberra. But it is a public course and is a bit hit or miss on the conditions. When it's mowed and maintained, it's just simply beautiful. And when it's not, well, it's a bit of an embarrassment. Nate Myers asks, would you consider the Hex or the Glitch a top 5 disc? Well, that's a great question. I believe the Glitch is a must-have disc, but not necessarily to have in your bag during the round. The Glitch is great for training, and it teaches you how to throw a disc properly, as well as being a fun way to warm up before a round. And for me, the Glitch is the perfect starter disc, and you can go a long way with just this one disc. And what about the Hex? Well, I did a comparison of the Buzz versus the Hex back in 2021, and controversially, I went with the Buzz. However, since the release of the Lozotl earlier this year, my opinion has changed, and the Hex is better than the Buzz now. The Hex is definitely a top 5 golf disc. Everybody should have a stable mid, and the Hex won't disappoint. Next question is from DC US 55, who asks, any advice on how to relax and play your best in tournaments? You and me both, mate, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that would love to know the secret to this one. And I definitely play my best when I'm relaxed, not thinking about things, and just playing my natural game, enjoying disc golf. And I think it's very important to practice your game often and sort out the mechanics well before any competition. You definitely don't want to be thinking about power pockets, follow-throughs, bracing during a competition. You just want to be able to step up and throw, automatic pilot. If you start thinking too much, that's when you can guarantee your game's going to go downhill. Next, let's have a look at what fairway drivers are in the bag. I've got about 6 discs. So starting with the most unstable, with the Crave, nice flippy hyzer flip disc, Proton plastic. Had this a long time. Throw this, huge distance, turns over, goes to the right, but it has a bit of stability at the end. So I really like that disc. I wanted something a little bit straighter, so I've got another one. I've got a max weight Fission Crave. This one basically laser beam straight, like a longer Hex, and has a little bit of stability at the end. Next, I've had a gap in my bag for probably since the last in the bag, where I had a clash. And the clash, I hit a tree and it became flippy, and I've been looking for something that's in that between the Crave and between the resistor for a good while now. Tried servos, I've had 3 of them, they all fly like Craves. So gave up on that. And then in the Gyro Palooza box a few years ago, I got this Proton resistor, and it does not fly like a resistor at all. It's nice and straight, flies like a servo numbers should. So that's what's in my bag at the moment for filling that slot. Then of course we have the full-on resistor. This is a fantastic disc. I call it in my review a mini Firebird. This one's board flat, very overstable, great for those upshot utility disc. Next, volts, speed 8. I've got 3 volts. So this plasma volt, I think this was in the last in the bag, still there, laser straight, a little bit of flip. Yeah, great. It's sort of a longer, I'd call it a longer Crave. So still in the bag, will be there for a while. We've then got a max weight Fission Volt. This one is a little bit straighter and longer, very similar to the Fission Crave that I had there. But yes, it's got a bit of finish on it. And then of course we've got this sort of proton neutron hybrid Volt, which is very overstable. And yeah, feels that flies like the numbers that a Volt should do. Okay, back to the questions. And Marlon Gonsalves asks, how would you convince someone to try Gyro, whether they're just starting out or have been playing for a while? Wouldn't Brad and Chad love to know the answer to this question? And that's a toughie. And I think all of the disc manufacturers have been pretty clever in positioning themselves to attract certain people to their brands. And personally, I think MVP have some of the best looking discs, both with the dual colors, the patterns, the overmolds, and the stamps. And for me, I was hooked on my first throw of an Octane around 5 years ago now. If I had to convince an established player, I'd give them a disc something like the Crave, and then watch their reaction when they throw a 6 or 7 speed disc so much further, something like a higher speed disc. And for beginners, especially those ultimate players, I think the Glitch is an easy win there. Next up, Jesse Budge asks, when I play disc golf, it's a great opportunity to exercise, meet various people, and also, if I'm on my own, gives me an opportunity to contemplate various things in life. How does disc golf benefit you and your life today, apart from providing YouTube content? Well, when I first started playing, I loved the chance to get out on my own and just enjoy disc golf and watch the discs fly. I'd play 4, 5, 6 rounds a week, and when I wasn't on the course, I was at the local park emptying my bag for hours at a time. These days I don't get the time to play as much, but I'm now finding I actually prefer to play with others. I love the social aspect of meeting new people, talking disc golf and life, and just taking a break from work. Okay, so let's move on to my distance drivers now and see what I'm throwing in the speed 9 to 13 range. And I'm going to start with the speed 9s. Tinkering with a lot of distance drivers at the moment. There may be a few changes, but let's start with the most overstable speed 9, and that's the Fireball. I did talk about this in a review last year. Didn't really like it at the time, but I've changed and I do like this as a utility disc. Does like to go left, very useful for certain times for headwinds. It's good for that. I also talked about the Terra and how the Terra was basically the MVP's Firebird. I still think that's the case. This one's not as sort of stable as it was, or overstable as it was, but still a very good disc. Next, Tesla. It's sort of not as stable, not as overstable as the Terra. So it fills that gap between straight to overstable nicely. I don't like it as much as Simon does, but I don't have his power either. And then moving on to more of a straight disc, I have a Fission Max Weight Insanity, which for me is holding a very nice straight thrower at the moment. And then I've got this very beat-in Proton Insanity, which is super flippy, great for hyzer flips, shots that turn to the right, etc. So that's in the speed 9. Moving on to speed 11, and this is where most of my discs are. So we've got a lot of different discs here. We've got, starting with most overstable, we've got a Phase. This is specifically just for thumbers. I don't throw them very often, but when I want to throw a thumber, the Phase is it. So that's in the bag. Then going through the Zenith. Zenith is a very good overstable distance driver. Got a little bit more push than, and probably less stability than the Terra. Then we've got Photons. We've got 3 Photons in the bag. So starting off with this Neutron, still very overstable, but not as overstable as the Zenith, but good for headwinds and those sorts of conditions. We then got this sort of 165 gram Fission Photon. This one's a good distance driver, flips up, has a little bit of turn, and then plenty of stability at the end. Probably my main workhorse driver. Then I've got a 135 gram Fission Photon, super flippy, great for those tailwind drives where you just want to just boom one out there. Don't throw it as often as I used to because it's so flippy, but yeah, great to have in the bag. Then we've got Traces, Streamline Trace. I do love the Trace. I've got the Proton and the Neutron. This one's very much a laser straight, the Neutron, and this one's got a little bit more stability, so great to have for distance. Now we're moving into Flippy, and we've got the Wave. This is a max weight Fission Wave, and very similar to my Octane, which I'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, not bad for distance drivers. For me, I prefer to throw the Photon, the Fission Photon. It's got a little bit more stability at the end. This one tends to go over and stay turned over. And then we've got a roller disc, Orbital. I need to do a bit more practice on this one, but it's there for, it's a super flippy. You can throw it on 45-degree hyzer and it'll turn straight over. So good disc to have there for that situation. And the final distance driver in the bag is the Octane. Now, I mentioned that the Octane was the first disc I got from MVP, and I actually said in the bag, if I had a MVP tour disc, it would be the Fission Octane. And well, MVP went and did it. Not a tour disc for me, but this disc, this is about a 168 gram Fission Octane. It has beat in nicely. I've got another one as well, a bit more weight in it. This one's sort of very similar to the Wave. It's got a bit of flip to it, but it has that stability at the end. So that's my in the bag. Okay, SnapK72 says, congrats, will you ship to Norway? Well, I'm assuming you're talking about the giveaway, and yes, it's open to anywhere in the world, within reason. Antarctica might be a tricky one. Luke Johnson asks, which MVP associated company, MVP, Axiom, or Streamline is your least favorite? That's like asking which is your least favorite child, and it's not an easy one to answer. All three brands have some great discs, but if I have to pick one, which my least favorite, I'd say Streamline, and that's mainly because I find a higher percentage of Streamline discs don't really fit my play style. And at present, I'm only bagging the Trace from Streamline, but I do have two of them. Mate asks, how many discs do you have? Way too many, but honestly, I've got around 150, and I'd say about 80% of those are MVP. I did have a lot of discs from other manufacturers and other brands when I started, but I pretty much donated most of those to the local club and to other people as loaners. Okay, before we talk giveaway, 2 discs that haven't made the bag yet, but so far I'm liking what I see, and it's probably just a matter of time on deciding what discs I'm going to take out to replace it with. Firstly, there's this brand new Watt. Flies like a beat in ohm, and I expect it'll beat in and become more understable. And hopefully, it might be the disc to replace the spin in my bag. Secondly, this Votum from Thought Space Athletics. I've had a hole in my bag for a good while now, which I mentioned, between the Crave and the Resistor. And on paper, the servo should be the one that does the job, but after trying 3 of them, they all fly like Craves, and well, I've moved on. And then unfortunately, the Votum doesn't fill that hole either. It flies like a beat in Volt, but I'm really loving it. But I already have 3 Volts in the bag, so I have to decide whether one of these, the Volts are coming out, or if something else is going to go into to make way for the Votum. Okay, now I know what you've all been waiting for, the giveaway. And in the past, I've limited my giveaways to Australia and New Zealand subscribers because of postage costs, but I know there's a lot of you out there in places like the US, Sweden, Canada, Finland, and Norway, and other countries. And it doesn't matter where you are located, you can enter this giveaway. So, what's up for grabs? Well, I want to do something different, and I want to customize the prize for the winner. So I'm going to put together a hand-picked selection of disc golf goodies worth at least $100. And to enter, obviously you'll need to be subscribed to the Disc Golf Down Under channel, and then go to the discgolfdownunder.com/giveaway page, enter your details, and answer the question: how many Axiom discs are currently in my bag? Now that's individual discs, not molds. And you've got until 30th of September to enter, and I'll contact the winner shortly after to get to know what you like, whether you're a novice or advanced, and I'll get together a custom package and get that out to you ASAP. Okay, well, that's it for this video. This was a bit different to my usual videos, but hopefully you enjoyed it. I've got some great ideas percolating away for some upcoming videos and reviews, but if there's something you'd like me to do or something to cover or review, leave a comment down below. Anyway, thanks again to everybody who subscribed or watched the channel over the past few years. Cheers, and bye for now.